look kind of in the middle there.
Okay.
I do believe we're live now. Hey everyone, I'm Michael Staten with the Gordon Institute of Public Policy. I'm here with Robert Morgus, a policy analyst on cyber policy at New America, the organization New America. And I'm here with Brian Fonseca. He's the director of the Gordon Institute of Public Policy here at FIU. He's also their technical expert on national security and U.S. foreign policy.
No.
I hope I got that right. So basically, we just had a great discussion on cyber warfare and Russia. So the future of Russia and cyber warfare and some of the current influence that's been exerted through that. Great discussion, but we're going to go into what we like to call the final 10 and just hit some of the key points and also hit some of those more interesting questions. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to ask the right questions, as it were. All right? So, Robert, before we do this, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name's Rob Morgus. I am a policy analyst with New America's Cybersecurity Initiative, as Michael just mentioned. My background is in international affairs, security studies, and Russian studies, which is sort of the angle at which I come towards cybersecurity. I have a tiny bit of a technical background, but nothing formal. So you too, international affairs major, can be like this.
Excellent.
That was good.
And Brian?
So I direct the Institute for Public Policy, and one of the areas that we've expanded over the last year and a half is our cyber policy program at the Institute. And so we're focused a lot on sort of that intersection of technology and policy and looking at how cyber operations and sort of the whole cyber domain sort of influences foreign policy, influences national security. And so we're really privileged to have Rob join us from New America up in DC to talk a little bit about what he thinks are some of the prevailing things that influence Russian cyber operations.
Excellent. And I'm Michael Staten. I'm a burgeoning global affairs communicator.
Is that a thing?
It's becoming a thing. It's becoming a thing. I have a much deeper background, but we don't need to get into that. It's not that interesting. And because we only have 10 minutes for this, really, we need to get right to it. So we have our final 10, Robert. So you're going to have to summarize your key points in a couple of minutes so we can move right on to the questions. You ready for this?
I think so.
Rapid fire. 10 minutes. All right, so summarize the key points and the most important takeaways for our audience.
So the first thing I would say is that any sort of influence operation that we see is just a continuation of existing intelligence practice and doctrine. What we saw with the recent influencing of elections is exactly that, a continuation of a strategy that has been built and forged over the last few decades, and definitely sort of you can trace that line from Soviet times all the way up until the US election here. Two, the evolution of this strategy is relatively easily traceable through writing that we're seeing come out of the war colleges, in particular in some of the strategic studies institutes in Russia, as well as sort of sprinkling here and there into their actual formal doctrine, their information security strategy, and their cybersecurity strategy. Number three, although power is highly concentrated within the Kremlin, we can with a relatively high degree of confidence say that there are two primary actors when it comes to the actual influence operations within the Russian government. Those are the GRU, which is the main intelligence directorate, and the FSB, which is the Federal Security Services, the sort of successor to the KGB. And then the final big point that I would make sure that we sort of address is that this organizational structure, as well as some more nuance that can be teased out, if we want to get into it here a little bit, is clearly sort of depicted in the influence operations that we saw take place in Ukraine, the US, and then now in other parts of Western Europe.
Very good. All right, so that only took you a minute and a half. So going into the big questions. So, I mean, we got into the details and the weeds on this a little bit, but, big questions. What is the difference? See, for those out there in the audience that don't necessarily know, and I think this is probably an issue, it's pervasive across the US at this point, what is hacking versus an influence operation?
Yeah, so this is a good question because we heard a lot of reporting about how Russia hacked the election, right?
Right.
I would say that's inaccurate if you want to sort of use terms of art. Hacking the election implies some sort of what we in the West call computer network operations. This involves sort of either affecting the confidentiality, the integrity, or the accessibility of the bits and bytes to code. While Russia did do some of this hacking, some of this computer network operation, the the target of the computer network operations were sort of specific email servers, think John Podesta's email server, or sort of the broader DNC email server. And now we're hearing they also probably targeted other campaigns. Marco Rubio came out earlier this week or last week and said, yeah, I was definitely targeted and compromised. That is what sort of in cybersecurity parlance is hacking, right? So you are actually working to exfiltrate information or alter it or make it so that the people who are supposed to have it can't access it. An influence operation is sort of predates the internet and predates hacking in that sense. An influence operation is, to put quite simply, an attempt by one group to sort of alter the perception of reality of another group in order to steer their decision-making process. What's interesting is that Russia, and now we're seeing this same type of strategy and tactic crop up in certain other parts of the world. Russia has now taken their computer network operators, so their hackers, and fused those individuals with these influence operators, with these teams that really understand the sort of science behind influence and information. They put them under the same roof, and they're now starting to sort of streamline the process of exfiltrating compromising data and then propagating that out to the public in order to sort of mold the chessboard, so to speak.
So quick follow-up to that, and give me 30 seconds. Why would some of these other individuals in our political system get hacked, but their information isn't necessarily put out as quickly as some of the other ones? Is that that's part of the influence operation, I'm assuming?
That would be part of the influence operation, I am also assuming. I think that you saw a relatively clear strategy at a high level to attempt to exert a certain amount of influence to generate policies that are a little bit more receptive to Russian interests on the US side. And the reason the information was leaked as it was very strategic and very pointed to sort of achieve that longer term strategic goal.
Excellent.
Can I ask a question?
Go
Before
for
you
it.
run that in, because I think that
These don't have to be just mine.
No. I think it's an important question. So I mean, this may be, looking at Russian influencing of the U.S. elections may have been a tactical success in a sense that it achieved its end objective of influencing the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Could it possibly have been a strategic miscalculation, though, on the part of Russia? Because now you're dealing with an environment in which every outlet, news outlet, every public official is centered on thinking about the Russian influence over U.S. political discourse, and then a community that's mobilizing to mitigate or counter that.
Yeah, so the strategy was underpinned by a number of assumptions that seemed like solid assumptions at the time, and it's beginning to look like they're falling apart a little bit. Right. Namely, and sort of primarily, that getting Donald Trump elected president would mean that U.S. policy would suddenly pivot in a way that's favorable to Russia, period. We're not seeing that because the President of the United States does not have the power to steer policy in quite the way that I think some of the strategists in the Kremlin assumed.
Or the way Putin does, right?
I don't think we can say it.
I can. I mean, he does. And so the idea is that, in the United States, the general electorate has a bit more influence in sort of shaping the political outcome or the policy outcomes. Not exclusively. There's a big debate, I think, in the academy over the influencers of U.S. foreign policy and whether or not they're bureaucracies, they're individuals, they're publics, corporations, and the list goes on and on. But the idea that maybe there was this miscalculation that just getting him elected alone would be enough to give some authorities to steering or redirecting U.S. policy towards Russia in a way that maybe would lift the sanctions or open up space in which Russia can continue to.
Yeah. And I would say that what's really interesting about this is we saw a very clear, nuanced understanding of how America works at the sort of low, nitty-gritty operational level. And we saw sort of the way that some of the information leaks were targeted at certain groups and individuals, certain critical ones. But it does appear that there was some sort of disconnect that as the chain went higher and higher with regard to how diffuse, let's say, power is in the United States compared to Russia.
Right, and Rob, it's a really strong contradiction just in concept as well. Because overall, for influence operations to work, it means you have to have a very intimate understanding
Absolutely.
of culture, a very intimate understanding of the way populations and societies move. And that's almost a prerequisite to effective influence operations. So on one end, you got that. But misunderstanding sort of the mechanical aspect of governing, perhaps, is where maybe there was a misstep, or at least our assessment is
I would agree with
a
that.
misstep. But it could, I mean, just to follow up, it could present a strategic failure for Putin if you have an entire community mobilizing to figure out how to now mitigate or combat Russia's capacity to influence domestic political discourse.
We always talk about how you don't want to poke the bear,
Right.
and we kind of, the bear poked us.
The bear poked us, and now we know it.
On that note, I'm going to hijack this for a second because we only have a minute and 40 seconds left. So what I want to do is make sure we get at this nice, big, futuristic question. Because as far as the future of cyber warfare and cybersecurity is concerned, how will artificial intelligence change that? Or what influence will artificial intelligence have on cyber warfare in the future? Do we have any forecasts on that? Do we have a good handle on that? You've got 1 minute and 15 seconds.
So I'm going to preface this with the comment that this is not necessarily an area of expertise for me, but I have done a little bit of work on it. It comes down to which side adopts artificial intelligence and leverages it effectively first. There's a great deal of promise in artificial intelligence and algorithms on the defensive side. Right. What is potentially scary is a highly sophisticated machine learning being put towards the offensive side, or being put towards developing what I've heard referred to as self-propagating or self-spreading malware. Right. It's a highly sophisticated worm that essentially is able to find itself, its target, and then deliver the payload.
Let me hit you with something else now. Can that be used defensively as well?
Yeah, so we see a firewall. A modern firewall uses artificial intelligence. A modern firewall takes in threat signatures, automatically triages those, and adjusts the firewall to block them. The most sophisticated firewalls in particular have very sophisticated artificial intelligence. We saw DHS working on designing one of those in the Einstein program. We've seen similar actions at the
80
state level.
seconds.
Multi-state ISAC is developing something called Albert, which is the sort of counterpart, the state counterpart to ISAC.
And I'm not going to kill your 8 seconds because the time is up. But I will plug New America's cybersecurity initiative, but also the Future of War initiative, because they tackle a lot of this stuff about the future of artificial intelligence, not just in the cyberspace, but also in the war, in sort of the overall battle space. Russia, talking about Russia, 30%. They're arguing that they want 30% of their ground troops to be robots and sort of incorporating artificial intelligence. So there's a full future of war space that incorporates artificial intelligence.
And there are, and we didn't even say the word ethics, but there are huge ethical concerns around this as well. And for anyone who's interested in sort of learning more about this, I think one of the best resources I can point you to is actually a fiction book called Ghostly, written by my colleague Peter Singer, who he basically outlines future war with China, and it talks about all of these different
and Peter Singer is headlining our cybersecurity executive security leadership and strategy course in Washington. He'll be one of the keynote speakers talking a little bit about Ghost Fleet and other thinking that he has in the cyberspace, so we'll be very fortunate.
Great way to plug that in there too. You beat me to the punch. Thank you.
Squirming, so
one more.
Stop. Oh, maybe not.
Wait, one more resource I want to throw out there, just because I've been listening to it all day, is New America's Cybersecurity Initiative podcast, which is called
The Cybersecurity Podcast.
The Cybersecurity Podcast. I'm sure there's a hashtag for that too. But it's an excellent podcast if you want to learn more about cybersecurity and our contemporary world. Yes, it's an excellent resource. Anything else you want to plug in?
No. Thank you very much, Rob, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. Really appreciate it. Again, I'm Michael Staten here with the Jack D. Gordon Institute of Public Policy. I'm here with Brian Fonseca, the director of our
It seems
institute.
like you have to try to remember that. What's up with that?
Well, because you and Aldo Fonseca have me confused with your last names now.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right, everyone. Good night. Thank you for watching.